I want to tell you a story tonight that I think will illustrate a spiritual truth. And this story is not original to me. It comes from a dear brother of mine named R.D. Cravens. As it happens, R.D. comes from a little town called Cravenstown, Tennessee, not too far from here, up the road on 40. And his ancestors founded that town, hence the name, Cravenstown. But he told me a story, and he gave me permission to share this story. But I think it will be a good story to make some spiritual application. So, R.D. had a sister named Ruby. And Ruby was unfortunately very overweight, and her health was rapidly declining because of her obesity. R.D. and his wife Sonia were really worried about this trend, and they decided to stage an intervention. So one morning, they went over to Ruby's house and they sat down with her and they spoke with her about her problem and told her that she needed to change or else she was going to get so sick that she would die. To her credit, Ruby acknowledged that she had a problem and that she was going to address it by eating less. So that afternoon, the three of them decided to go for a bite to eat at McDonald's after they had talked. Ruby stepped forward to order, and she said, "I'll have 2 Big Macs, a large fry, and a Coca-Cola." "Ruby," R.D. exclaimed, "remember what you promised? You said that you would do better." "You're right, R.D. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I would like to change my order. I'll have 2 Big Macs, a medium fry, and a large Diet Coke." At this point, you probably had a good chuckle because you realized that while Ruby gave up a few calories when she changed her order, she didn't give up enough to make a big difference in her weight. And being somewhat of a foodaholic myself, I can commiserate with Ruby. I love good food and I love a lot of it. However, I know that in order to make a sizable difference in my weight, I must eat less, must make healthier food choices, and I must exercise more. It is hard to stay on track, though, when that delicious chocolate cookie is right in front of me and it's practically begging me to eat it. It's far easier for me to do what Ruby did and rationalize that just eating a little bit less cookies or cake or whatever the sweet may be than I would normally eat is all I need to do to lose that weight. Yet I know from experience that Ruby's weight loss plan is not going to work for me. I'm going to have to make the hard choices consistently to see any meaningful impact. And I think we can draw a great parallel to our spiritual lives in this story. We've become Christians, and we know that requires us to put away the old man, that is, the carnality of this world, and to put on the new man or the transformed person living for Christ. And we read about that in detail in Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 through 17. Often we think we can get away with still doing worldly things as long as we're not indulging in them too much. The problem with that thinking, though, is that the Bible shows us that we can only choose one or the other, not both, and not even a little bit of one and a lot of the other. Even allowing some sin into our lives is going to stunt our spiritual growth, separate us from God, and having us again doing Satan's will instead of God's will. Many passages that we don't have time to consider illustrate that, like Luke 16:13, Romans 6:20, James 4:4, Matthew 6:23, Romans 8:7 through 8. On and on we could go. Like changing our dietary habits, living the Christian life is hard to stick to. John 15:18 through 20 says that. Matthew 5:10, 2 Timothy 3:12, they tell us that. Like Paul, though, we want to do what's right, and we will still have things from our past life that tempt us, from our past sinful lives that tempt us to go back to the way of living before becoming a Christian, and tempt us to do it that little bit. Again, Romans 7:15 through 25 talks about that. The great thing about changing our eating lifestyle is that even though sometimes I fall off the wagon, so to speak, I can get back on the wagon. And it's that way with our spiritual life too. We will sin while we're living the Christian life. 1 John 1:8 tells us, but it also goes on to tell us there that we can change, that we can make the decision not to continue in sin and not even a little bit of it. And if we do that, we can be assured that we will have God's forgiveness. 2 Chronicles 30 verse 9 is the last verse I want to look at, and it summarizes God's position on forgiveness well. It says, "For if you turn again unto the Lord, your brethren and your children shall find compassion. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful, and will not turn away his face from you if you return to him." So we have that promise, and we know that if we fall off the wagon, that we can get back on. If you've fallen off the wagon tonight, if you realize that you haven't been living the way that you should, it's an opportunity to get back on. Or if you need to get on the wagon in the first place, if you realize that you need to become a Christian, that you need to become a child of God, this is the perfect opportunity to do that. Or if you just need encouragement, as we talked about in our Bible class tonight, that's a need that sometimes we have, is encouragement from our brothers and sisters to keep doing what is right and what is good. So if you need any of those things tonight, I hope that you'll come forward as we stand and sing.